That's the best I got.
It's interesting how materialism comes into the picture. He sees this as well. So it's a combination of equality and individualism. There's the pen. So individualism leads to competitiveness. Okay? Plus, equality going bad leads to all ideals are equal. So now the question becomes, when you compete, what's the standard for winning and losing? Well, it can't be a qualitative standard because all ideas are equal. If all ideas are equal, then there can be no one standard for determining who wins and who loses from the competitiveness that comes from individualism. Together, Brantley?
We're together.
Okay. So if it's not a qualitative standard for winning and losing, there's only one thing left, what would it be?
Quantitative.
Well, that's materialism. Where more is better. Right? So there you are. So that's how these two principles, the first two principles, leads to materialism. Quantitative. Bigger is better, more is better. That's it. Taken to an extreme, materialism leads to garish consumerism. It's just because crass consumptionism. The good thing about materialism is that all of us can own relatively expensive cars and big screen TVs, powerful computers. During feudalism, that was that level of technology, whatever level of technology existed in the Middle Ages, could only be owned by the nobility. Now everybody can own this stuff. That comes from materialism. In order to avoid this kind of crass consumerism, he said, those who become richest, who can play this game of materialism the best, have to be able to take over the role of nobility when they became the patrons of the arts. And for the most part, that has existed in America. Name all the great universities that were founded by multi-billionaires. Name some of them.
Vanderbilt.
Who was Vanderbilt?
Railroad.
Yeah, which one in particular, do you know?
Cornelia.
The New York, that's Grand Central Station, New York Central Railroad. Leland Stanford was also in railroads on the West Coast. University of Chicago was founded by Rockefellers. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Duke University, that's cigarettes. How about Carnegie Hall? Who built Carnegie Hall?
Andrew Carnegie?
What industry was he the master of?
Oil?
Steel, yeah.
Yeah.
Rockefeller was oil.
Oil, yeah. Next one.
Building great universities, building great exhibition halls, great museums. Have any of you ever been to the American Museum of Natural History in New York? It's one of the great museums. That was founded by Teddy Roosevelt. So when the rich take over the role of nobility as being patrons of the arts, all the great Beethoven, it's Chopin, the list goes on and on, those people had no jobs. They were able to spend their time writing music, for example, because a nobleman or a noble family paid them to do it. And for the most part, America, we've had that. These multimillionaires, for one reason or another, have decided that they wanted their names on great universities and exhibition halls, etc. So there you are. That's Democracy in America. There's a lot more to it as well. It's a very complex book. But that's what I could say about it in 2 hours. How about some questions?
Planned obsolescence, isn't that the result of the materialism gone too far? Seems like that was the class we talked about, how this need to maintain and keep creating cheap goods so that the economy continues to go.
That's a very good point.
You end up
That's a
with
very
planned
good
and then
point.
perceived, we even have perceived obsolescence.
That's an excellent point.
And
Excellent point.
you wouldn't have it without materialism.
Of course. Anything else?
Do you think our society is prone to an excess of these? You're talking about in moderation, but it seems to me anyway that it's prone to the excess of all of these.
Well, not until really the 20th century. It was happening to a certain extent during Jacksonian democracy from 1828 to 1836. And that's when Tocqueville was here. And that's why he could see both sides of it. But if it wasn't for Jacksonian democracy, we wouldn't have had a strong party system in this country, and also working people wouldn't have ultimately gotten the vote, because he jump-started that. The popular vote began around that time, until that time it was electoral vote by itself that ran the presidential election, for example.
Yeah.
Do you think that public relations and marketing plays a role in
Of course, that's the part of the, of course, absolutely.
that
That's-
propagates the,
Sure. It doesn't propagate it, it's part of it.
yeah,
It's the emphasis on interest groups that leads to this. Exactly. These are great questions. And he had a handle on all of this stuff in 1831. Isn't that amazing? How forward-looking he was.
Do you think a lot of sort of the conflicts, I guess, between people, it seems to be kind of over artificial things that I guess self-interested people in power sort of propagate,
Give me an example of what you mean.
dividing people regionally or by religion or by race or by ideology. So if people are divided over something that they can squabble over, then they don't have that sort of ability to unify.
But people always, the greater number of people that you have, the harder it is to have unity. Just, I don't know, I hear a lot in the...
And that's why the unified groups are the ones who are dominating. That's
Yeah, the
exactly
smallest
right.
people.
Yeah.
I hear in the news a lot about so somebody's like Obama or whoever's dividing this country by race. Every time they talk about race, it's this politician's dividing the people by race. And it's the division already exists. I always feel like I always have a problem when people say that, because it's like, the division already exists. Like, it doesn't take like some politician to like rile it up. Although it can certainly happen, I guess.
Yeah,
with
but he's
Trump.
talking about the strategy of divide and conquer. I think
Yeah.
that's what he's talking about.
What-
All of these things exist because of the smallness of human beings.
Yeah.
But we're talking about people who rile them up, and that's what these demagogues are infamous for.
My favorite like sort of political quote was Lyndon Johnson. It's if you can convince the lowest white man that he's better than the best colored man, you'll never notice that you're picking his pocket.
There you go. How about that?